很荣幸邀请到国际上知名的学者，微软的宋歌平博士。那宋博士呢，事实上他跟我们学校也蛮有一些同仁也蛮有交情哦。那包括早上跟校长碰面，那校长是宋博士以前在贝尔实验室的同事哦。那昨天晚上呢，也跟我们学校物理系的依林院士哦。那依林院士是宋博士的，就是之前中小学的同学，
还有幼稚园，
还有幼稚园。对，那所以今天很难得可以邀到宋博士来我们学校。那宋博士是1973年台大电机的学士，然后呢，在1982年拿到美国 Stanford 的电机博士。那之后呢，任职在贝尔实验室，还有日本的 NTT， 还有日本的 ATR。那目前是微软亚洲研究院的首席研究员。那宋博士呢，目前也是国际电子电机工程师学会的院士。那宋博士专长呢，主要在语音讯号处理。那在这一块里面呢，从辨识然后到后端的合成，然后语者辨识等等几乎都有涉猎。另外呢，那宋博士呢，曾担任 IEEE 信号处理学会语音技术委员会的委员，那也担任 IEEE Transaction on Audio and Speech Processing 的副主编，那也曾担任香港中文大学的客座教授。那在国际的著名杂志研讨会上，发表超过250篇的重要论文，那也拥有超过50项的美国或国际上的发明专利。那宋博士今天为我们带来的讲题是话语者和语言的语音合成。那让我们以最热烈的掌声欢迎宋博士。
谢谢王老师。谢谢王老师。我很高兴能够来到中大跟各位分享一下我在微软亚洲研究院，其实还包括在贝尔实验室 ATR 和日本的 NTT Research Lab， 过去跟语音my interactions with speech processing, and even though that I have been elevated. At IEEE, they have a special term called when you have been elevated to the level of so-called fellow. But fellow is not really a 院士. It's a fellow is really just you have heard that he is a good fellow. Usually he's a useless person. Good fellow, that means he is not very sharp, so as long as you work long enough in a field like speech, like what I have been doing for the more than 35 years, and then finally there is a so-called 安慰奖. But anyway, so today can you hear me even without microphone? Well enough? In the back row? 在后排的还听得到吗？如果听得清楚，我就不用 microphone. How about that? No answer? Yeah, no, yeah. Well, it's in speech, the most fearful or the most fearful feedback after you give a talk, or even before you give a talk, you heard nothing, so-called the speechless. But anyway, let me just start. And so the title is Synthesizing Speech, Intra or Interspeaker in the Language, or what we try to do is try to find some fundamental units when we try to synthesize or we want to decompose speech into the basic units. Whether it is true, it is a hypothesis, but unlike this hardcore physics, and speech is, according to my boss, long time ago, a pioneer in speech processing, Jim Flanagan, he always emphasizing speech is a science, but it's also an experimental science. So you have to work with it. You have to work day in and day out to learn, because everything is not as precise as you said. It is not 1 + 1 = 2, like the pure music, the pure mathematics, but it's really still governed by the physical rules, biological rules, anatomical, and various different things. But anyway, let me just start. So it is a long video in 2012, and we were the first one to do in Tianjin, and we were the first one to do speech-to-speech translation. And the guy over there was my boss's boss. He was brave enough that time. Right now, everybody is saying that the speech-to-speech translation is nothing special, and you can just try it, and then things will be doing okay. But in those days, speech recognition was still not perfect. Even today, it's still not perfect. And also, not to mention the translation. And also, we want to turn my boss's speech in English, translated into Chinese, and then spoken out according to his own voice. Just sounds like him. He doesn't speak Chinese, so we want to build a synthesizer, or the text-to-speech synthesizer, to speak Chinese, but sounds like him. So that's quite a challenge. That's one of his favorite projects when he was our research, the executive vice president. But let me just show you some segment or clips of it.
Now, I want to come back to the topic of natural user interfaces. One of the most natural interfaces for people is human speech.
Real-time decoding.
And for the last 60 years, computer scientists have been trying to find ways to understand and recognize.
Oh, sorry.
You've heard of Apple's Siri product, which answers simple questions. Microsoft Connect has a robust speech interface that allows you to control the interface, and it even allows you to issue commands in the middle of games. Still, these systems have a lot of errors. And the error rates for arbitrary speech have been in the 20 to 25% range. Well, a few years ago, researchers at Microsoft Research and at the University of Toronto came together to develop another breakthrough in the field of speech recognition research. The idea that they had was to use a technology in a way patterned after the way the human brain works. It's called deep neural networks.
So that was the domain.
And to use that to take in much more data than had previously been able to be used with the hidden Markov model.
To train the speech recognizer.
And use that to significantly improve recognition rates. So that one change, that particular millions of pages a day for users into their native language. It's an extremely heavily used service.
We have Microsoft.
Now, if I want to have what I'm saying be translated into Chinese, we can take the text that comes from my voice and put that through a translation system. It really happens in 2 steps. In the first instance, we take the English and we convert it more or less word by word into Chinese text.
So the next is,
and I think pretty soon you may see that up on the screen.
Translate into Chinese, word for
so
word.
What happens is we're basically taking the English text and pushing it through the translation system. We then have to reorder that text in Chinese because the word order in Chinese is not the same as the word order.
Different sequence or different
to produce something that begins to resemble something that a Chinese speaker might say. So now we're taking the things that I'm saying and we're converting them into Chinese text.
Words, they find the mapping
now,
in the dictionary.
The last step
to see the corresponding
that I want to be able to
Chinese
take in this process is to actually speak to you in Chinese. Now the key thing there is we've been able to take a large amount of information from many Chinese speakers and produce a text-to-speech system that takes Chinese text and converts it into Chinese language. And then we've taken an hour or so of my own voice, and we've used that to modulate the standard text-to-speech system so that it would sound like me. So what you see now is the result of that change. I'm speaking in English, and hopefully you'll hear me speak in Chinese in my own voice.
Still waiting. The students or the audience were very...
Again, the results are not perfect. There are in fact quite a few errors.
结果并不完美。
There's much work to be done in this area.
在这方面有很多工作要做。
So I was more nervous than him. Even I was not.
But this technology is very promising.
用这个技术很有希望。
And we hope in a few years that we'll be able to break down the language barriers between people.
数年后，我们希望能够打破人们之间的语言障碍。
Personally, I believe this is going to lead to a better world.
这我个人认为，这将导致更好的世界。
I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations today.
希望今天你喜欢其他的讲座。
Thank you.
谢谢。
Well, I guess you really get a glimpse of it, and putting all this together, the speech recognition followed by a text from one language, translation from one language to the other, and finally spoken in the speaker's original voice, but in a different language. And it was a very courageous attempt, but we did. I think he was happy, and I was relieved. But anyway, so let's get back to whatever that we want to discuss or share with you. And what I just said, we want to find the elementary particles of speech production or speech generation or speech recognition. Those basic units, if can be harnessed, and will help us to do better speech recognition, better translation, because the recognition result, better recognition result always can drive a better translation, or at least will not be harmful. And then finally, spoken the whole thing in a target language, but it's in his own voice, will just increase the interactions between the speaker and the listener, but in two different languages. So I think it's like what he said, Rick Rashid said, and it will make a better world, and the world will become flatter, and also the world will become friendly, and hopefully there will be less war. Even they are killing each other, they will be able to understand each other. No, I was just joking. But anyway, so how can we do that? Human speech production system, because all the mammal systems, 所有的哺乳类, your listening mechanism, your inner ear, your auditory cortex, or the language processing, and also your production system, which is your vocal fold, 你的声带, your vocal tract, 你的声道, 你的口腔, your tongue, the palate, or the hard palate, or the nasal tract, all these are similar to each other. If the adult will have a longer vocal tract and the probably thicker vocal fold, but essentially they are similar, or 相似. They are very similar to each other. So in general, the produced sound, the generated sound will be pretty much similar. But similar in what sense? And if they are identical, then there is no difference between speaker 1 and speaker 2 when they speak the same sentence. But no, even for the same speaker, when you say the same sentence in the morning or in the evening, when you are in a different emotional state or in a different physical state, and then the sound will be received differently. And so that involves with the perception, the cognition, and the interpretation of what the message embedded in the voice. All right? So, but there are, like what I said, still there's the similarity or the speech production system. You see the teeth, you see the tongue, you see the lips, you see the nasal tract, you see the palate, and you see the vocal fold, and also the jar. All of these for human beings, they are very much similar, even though the male speaker tends to have a higher pitch, lower pitch, or higher lower pitch, or the lower fundamental frequency, and the female speaker tends to have a higher pitch and the lower or shorter pitch period, but still does not prevent the listener from recognizing the speech, what has been said, or who has said that. So it is not a hopeless job, because the anatomy, 生理构造 of the speaker is very similar from one to the other, and which is also true when you speak a different language. You will find there are quite a few sounds are common across different languages. Like almost all the babies will start their mumbling with papa, mama. Those kind of, we call it bilabial sounds, or 双唇音, and that's easier. Ah is the so-called the full open mouth, and the 开口. It's the easy vowel to be produced, and the p, pa, ma are we call it bilateral, I forgot, the 双唇 is the bilabial sound. All these are readdressing or reconfirm what we just said. The production system are similar, so the sound pattern, the pace, and everything will have some kind of similar characteristic. But when we are talking of different language and different speakers, and you will find at the language level, sentence, phrase, words, syllables, phoneme, etc., they have overlap region, they have non-overlap regions. For example, after spending so many years in the United States, I'm still having a hard time to produce the TH sound, so-called the th. that most of the Chinese speakers, including myself, will have a problem to pronounce the th. They tend to replace the th with s. And the other sounds, like different dialect speaker, like people in Hong Kong or Guangdong, they tend to produce the th as f rather than s. So the name Arthur, they will pronounce as alpha. So that's kind of interesting. Or even the same language, say English, different people or different accented people will have a different production of those. Like in Britain, UK, and the American English paper will be produced as a pipa, and which is another variation, or you can call it distortion or different mapping from your articulation to the final produced sounds, because they are really representing a different sound. And so those kind of things needs to be handled in kind of systematic, and hopefully to handle those outliers too. But talking about the difficulties and how about the hope. But if we chop the speech into smaller and smaller units, or shorter and shorter units, we will find down to the frame level, say like 10 millisecond frame level, and those smaller unit we call the subphonemic, or some people in the speech recognition community call the sino. That subphonemic level, and we will see more and more common parts across different languages. Or to the extreme, down to the frame level, everybody is using the cell phone. The cell phone, anybody can pick up the cell phone, speak Indian, speak Chinese, speak the Russian, Slavic language, or Scandinavian language, and no problem. And the production or the regeneration, decoding, encoding, decoding, in general will not hamper the quality of the output. So essentially, the mobile phone used right now by everyone, essentially a language, the decoding and encoding and decoding algorithm aspect will guarantee the whole thing is pretty much language and speaker independent. So if that's the case, definitely the hope is there. But on the other hand, equalization, like what I said, the speaker, from one speaker to a different speaker, even if they speak the same language, and still the vocal tract length can be different, the vocal fold can have a different level of tissues, and so on and so forth. So we still need to equalize the difference, and to make sure the different articulate length or the physical dimension will still make the recognition, synthesis, everything to be communicatable between the speaker and the listener. So I hope this will not be an old hat. And in speech community, we use this very simple model. So it's called so-called the source builder model of speech production. And what is that? So here is the source. Usually you try to generate some kind of periodic wave when we'll say ah, u, e, e, those vowel sounds. And this is waveform, this is the corresponding the periodic cone filter like of the spectrum. And going through the vocal tract, and then you see some kind of local peaks, what we call the formants. the formants 共振风 are really the natural resonance of your vocal tract. Your vocal tract is a 导波管, it's a waveguide. That 导波管 will have the local peaks, and those local peaks tends to either 不知道是哪个是鸡哪个是蛋 the cause and the cause and the effect, and because going through the many years, many I don't know how many years evolution, and all those formants or the so-called resonance of the natural resonance of your vocal tract definitely carries the information of the sound that you want to produce. And the sound is the speech sound. And so R and E and U or Fu and N or M, those kind of formants are different. So if you learn this convolution of this one with the vocal tract filter, and you produce something like the output in the waveform, and in the frequency domain, you have the product of this one convolved with that in the time domain will be the product in the frequency domain. So what you will see is when it is a vowel, is something like that. And those things will go through your inner ear and produce your perception of that sound. And a sequence of those sounds will form your speech sequence. So if we want to change the pitch, right here we'll say that using 200 hertz, and later I will show this is what we call the spectrogram, which is showing the darker it is, the more energy it has along the frequency and the time, and this guy is the corresponding pitch, or F0, so called the fundamental frequency, and you can just divide the whole thing into the phoneme and the corresponding words, and this is the power level, and this is the beginning silence, what's easy velocity, and silence. And so the pitch, also called the 调 in Chinese, can be modified like this. Can someone help me? Can someone help me? Just like its Chinese 四声 is 降调, you lower the pitch, and when you listen to the speech, you will hear this.
Can someone help me? Can someone help me?
Sorry, I have a hard time, very sensitive. So, if in the normal English, a yes-no question, you will definitely need to raise the final tone or the pitch to address that it is a yes-no question. So let's listen to it again.
Can someone help me?
In comparison,
Can someone help me?
so you can see in English, we use this raising or lowering the tone to differentiate the yes-no question. Of course, these days, including myself, sometimes I'm lazy and I always use the lower tone and even if it's a yes-no question. But anyway, you got my point. So the pitch, everything else, everything is synthesized. The input is, can someone help me? The text sequence. And we go through the TTS, the text-to-speech synthesizer, to synthesize either this, can someone help me, or can someone help me? And now you can extrapolate or interpolate the whole thing in Chinese. Ma, 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 ma. Everything is MA, and produced as a ma, it's a high flat, ma, outgoing, ma, the third tone, or ma, the fourth tone. Yeah, but anyway, so the Chinese is a tonal language, English is stress language. In other words, the lexical tone in Chinese is correct, but in English, the pitch doesn't address this so-called lexical tone. And another demo is that we use the same synthesizer. All the information in the spectrum are the same, but we just modulate the pitch. And certain sound, certain phoneme has been swapped because, particularly in the Wuhan area, and ne and the le, and they don't try to differentiate. So take, say na, the L, 哪一个拿出来 they will say 拿出来 they don't differentiate it. But anyway, let me just do the quick demo. Oops.
热烈祝贺微软亚洲研究院成立10周年。
That was quite a few years ago. We did this.
热烈祝贺微软亚洲研究院成立10周年。
So the duration and the tone patterns are different, but the content is still the same. The phoneme patterns pretty much the same. And then how about the people from Wuhan? They will say this.
热烈祝福微软亚洲研究院成立10周年。
So 10周年 they instead of 10周年 they will say 10周年. So ne and le are confused with each other or intermingled. Yeah, but anyway, so let's just go to the text-to-speech block diagram. The system, usually in the old days, we use HMM models to train it first, such that we'll have a parametric model to produce the text-to-speech process or the generated corresponding signal. In the testing, and the input is a sequence of text. And going through the text analysis, why this text analysis? Because, for example, 1964, either you have various different ways to, you can say 1964, or if it's a year, number of the year, and you will say 1964. So, but the input could be entirely that. So you need to take the context into account before you can figure out which should be 1964, 1964, or 1964, and so on and so forth. Or the ST dot. Without the context, it could be saint, it could be street, right? So all these variabilities will just needs to be normalized, we call, or analyzed, such that the correct sequence of phonemes can be produced. And once that is done, and then getting the model parameters, and then you try to generate a trajectory, and that trajectory will be used to going through a vocoder. Vocoder's name coming from Bell Labs, called the voice encoder, and try to produce the final waveform, or the original training database can be segmented into the corresponding unit and then concatenating the chunks of speech. We call the concatenation or the 拼接式的这个 speech synthesis. At Microsoft, we choose this trajectory tiling-based TTS, and so first we generate a sequence of the trajectories in terms of the spectrum, in terms of the gain or the volume, in terms of the F0, and of course you see the broken pitch contour because something there is becoming unvoiced, so-called the fuzz. Those fricative sounds, then that will not vibrate your vocal fold, and then you chop the speech into segments, and then you try to put them together at the most appropriate concatenation points, and this is the result that we use this method, so-called trajectory tiling-based TTS demo, and I'll just play 2 sentences for English and British English, which is trained by 5 hours corpus.
There may be something to all of those explanations.
Or maybe one word. Difficulty. Let's try this one.
新浪体育讯，继荷兰击败乌拉圭后，西班牙在第2场半决赛中淘汰了德国，这令2010年南非世界杯注定将产生一个新的冠军，继乌拉圭、意大利、德国、巴西、英格兰、阿根廷和法国后，荷兰或西班牙将成为历史上第8个世界杯王者。
All right. We were talking about the same language synthesis, same speaker, but how about the cross-lingual TTS training? And you want to use someone's English data to train his Chinese TTS because there are quite a few very, very smart guy or very, very good at manipulating their articulator to learn a second language or the target language, but there are still many non-native speakers, or there are still many monolingual speakers. They can only speak their mother tongue. For example, we try to train, he was the boss's boss's boss. And he speaks different languages, but not including Chinese. So we will try to do his Chinese TTS using a TTS model training process with this, again, still with this the trajectory tiling approach. And this is what we have done. We use a reference speaker, which is female. And that female speaker, we're using 2 hours of her Chinese, and this is the synthesized voice of the sentence.
把不可能变为可行的语音翻译计划。
So the speech translation was impossible. We turned that impossibility into possibility. And this is after the training, Craig Mundy's English data was used to train his Chinese English, Chinese TTS.
把不可能变为可行的语音翻译计划。
So these two are the 2 spectrogram of the same sentence. 把不可能变为可能的语音翻译计划. You do see, like what I said, the similarity when they are speaking the same sentence, and even though the details might be different, or the spacing, but the shape, like here is a dip and then up, here is a dip and up. So the spectral patterns, the so-called spectral patterns or the spectrograms are very much look like each other, at least similar to each other. So it carries the same sentence message without being changed. but still the speaker's voice has been well preserved, even though this one was trained entirely from his English recording, only 1 hour of English recording. Next, let's just reverse the whole thing to see how do we do this speaker-independent DNN ASR. DNN stands for the deep neural net. You might have, if you work on the ASR, you might have seen these pictures many, many times ago. This is still the spectrogram, and you chop the whole thing into a long window, which is roughly it's on the order as a 100 to 200 millisecond chunk, and the shift is still shifted every 10 milliseconds, and going through a multi-layer deep neural net, and the final one still using the Peter Markov model, so-called the DNN CD HMM, context-dependent DNN HMM model, and so this part is Markov model, this part is the deep neural net, this part is input features. But can we see something more symbolic or the space-wise? For example, what you just see is a speaker-independent DNN ASR acoustic model for any input, X, which is the chunk of the data, and you want to go through this DNN ASR acoustic model to map into a fixed dimension from P1 to Pi. That is really a phonetic representation or unit, what we were talking about, the fundamental units of speech. And so input will have a stochastic representation in the phonetic space. This is acoustic space mapping to this phonetic space into a fixed dimension from P1 to Pi, assuming they have a finite set of basic units. And then if you have a different chunk going through the same process, you have a different representation, stochastic representation from P1 to Pi prime. So the mapping process is almost mechanical after this one is trained. So here are the two vectors or chunks in the acoustic space. Here are the two vectors in the phonetic space. Those mapping will help us, to do the speech recognition. Why? Because the acoustic space, like what I said, and your vocal tract, your vocal fold, your F0, your performance, or with or without noise, can vary this acoustic space vectors dramatically. But the final goal is really we want to characterize what is the point it is in the phonetic space, and going through the whole speaker-independent DNN ASR acoustic model, you can equalize the speaker difference and the acoustic variability through this model mapping process. Kullback library divergence is a good statistical measure to measure the two output. What is their phonetic distance in the phonetic space, and of course there's a corresponding acoustic space, and here is the phonetic space. The phonetic space we want to measure by using this Kullback library divergence. It is a positive semi-definite. It is not a distance measure because it doesn't satisfy the triangular inequality, and also it is a distortion measure in the probabilistic space. and we try to do cross-lingual TTS. In other words, the Rick Rashid or the Craig Mundy's Chinese TTS has been trained using the same very simple Kullback-Leibler divergence I just introduced in the previous 2 slides. And how do we do that? And also the cross-lingual speech technology applications, what are the possible usage of this if we can do this with reasonable accuracy? And for example, computer-assisted language learning, we call the CALL, C-A-L-L. It's a speaker wants to learn a target language or second language, and can we use his own recording in his mother tongue and then synthesize a good TTS and say the whole thing. If you try hard, you will be able to speak the target language. And we have right now we call the Weiran Xiaoying to help the Chinese speakers to learn English. And also I don't need to address that again, speech-to-speech translation possibility. You will be able to translate and translate to speak.